Investors only want to give their money to businesses once they are sure that their money or their funds will be efficiently used. And they know they are going to enjoy and obtain returns from the investment. Now, this confidence can be established when there is high transparency in different companies. And this transparency is also followed due to the policies or the principles from international bodies. When there is proper independent supervisory board, when there is proper treatment of shareholders, including the minority shareholders. Therefore, the corporate governance structure specifies how rights and responsibilities are distributed among the board, the managers, the shareholders, the stakeholders, the rules and procedures when it comes to decision making. So in doing this, it also provides the structure through which the objectives of the company are set and through which the objectives of the company are also attained. It also focuses on monitoring performance. So therefore, ownership structure are of major importance in corporate governance because when it comes to incentives of managers, which can affect the efficiency of the firm, ownership structure can have a very great impact. Therefore, we can define ownership structure by the distribution of equity with regards to votes and capital, but also by the identity of the equity owners. Now, we have different types of ownership structure. We have the concentrated ownership structure, which is common today, and this is very prevalent all over the world, where we have large owners. This is very effective when it comes to monitoring and managing performance. Although sometimes excess monitoring of managers can decrease their initiatives. And then we have the employee ownership, and this can create a social psychological bond when it comes to effectiveness, satisfaction, and performance. That is when an employee knows that he also has that ownership ability. Although sometimes an employee can be too powerful and it can affect the organization. Individual ownership. This is when individual investors create a very strong controlling mechanism. Since whatever they have is not in that corporation is not diversified. Organization ownership. The ownership is smooth. It is very smooth for organizations because they have the ability to analyze information, to provide new innovations, inventions, and technologies, to create a well thought out corporate governance system. Although the efficiency may be decreased due to the fact that the controlling organization may have different goals from that of profit maximization. State ownership is usually efficient, more often than not. Sometimes it may be inefficient because of lack of incentives for government employees to maximize efficiency when it comes to cost reduction, when it comes to quality. So these are the types of ownership that we have. I want you to also read your notes to get more clarity. And I want you to also check your core text, your supplementary text, and do more research on different types of ownership. Corporate governance and board structure. Nearly all companies are managed by a board of directors, and this board of directors are elected by shareholders. And the reason they are elected is so they can run the company on their behalf. More often than not, in most countries of the world, these directors are subject to re-election at periodically by the shareholders. Now, this appears to give the shareholders power, and then shareholders have to place trust in those who act on their behalf, and those who act on their behalf are the board members. Therefore, a board of directors is a group of people who jointly supervise the activities of an organization, focusing on management performance, policy formulation, strategic decisions, among others. So it is important to know that the shareholders elect the directors, and they also authorize them to run the company on their behalf. Now, the board of directors have quite a number of roles, and this is summarized by the King Report. I want you to also visit the King Report in your context. It's a South African report on corporate governance. And one of their roles is to define the purpose of the company. Every company has a purpose, has a vision, has an objective. Also, they must be able to define the values by which the company will perform its daily duties. They must be able to identify who the stakeholders are to the company and how relevant they are. And they must also be able to develop a strategy combining these factors. And finally, they must be able to ensure implementation of all these strategies. So the shareholders elect the directors, like I said earlier, and they authorize them to run the company on their behalf. As the board sets enterprise aims and appoint managers to carry out these aims. So therefore, the managers carry the authority of the board, and the board that of the shareholders. So that I've mentioned before, that the shareholders elect the directors, and they give them that authority, and they give them that go-ahead to run the company on their behalf. Now, what is the focus of the board of directors? They must be focused on accountability. They must be willing when it comes to decision making to clearly define the objectives of the corporation. Not only must they be willing, they must be open when it comes to the agreed objectives. They must also be transparent. When it comes to decisions, when it comes to actions, when it comes to activities, they have to be scrutinized by appropriate bodies and institutions and individuals. They must be effective and efficient. That means they must be able to achieve the maximum at the barest minimum cost. Responsiveness. They must have the capacity to respond rapidly when there is a societal change. They must be flexible. They must critically be ready to re-examine policies because the economy, the environment of the society is so dynamic. Forward vision. Ability to anticipate the future problems based on the current situation. Very important. And finally, the rule of law. Transparency of laws, regulations, and codes into account. They must be able to consider how laws are enforced and how transparent they have to be when it comes to the rule of law, when it comes to adhering to regulations, and when it comes to obeying or submitting themselves to the courts. The board of directors, they have a duty of care and skill when it comes to supervising the policy and management of the company's activities. As agents for the company, the directors have the power and duties to carry on the business, subject to the restrictions imposed by the memorandum or articles or any statutory provisions containing or contained in the corporation's law. Now, can you identify the types of board of directors? We have the executive and the non-executive board of directors. The executive board of directors, they are full-time employees. They work for the company more often than not at a senior level or in a senior capacity. When it comes to policy matters or functional business areas, those are things they focus on. It is commoner in larger companies that have different departments, finance departments, IT departments, among others. Now, executive directors are usually recruited by the board of directors. And more often than not, they are the highest earners in the company. And then they are different from the non-executive directors. Non-executive directors are not employees of the company, and they are not involved in the day-to-day running. Usually they have their job somewhere else. Although they may be very popular people in the philanthropist in the society, but when it comes to minimizing conflict of interest and providing a balancing influence, non-executive directors are expected to carry out this function. So their roles can be summarized as contributing to the strategic plan, scrutinizing the performance of the executive directors, providing external perspective on risk management, and dealing with different people issues, such as resolving conflict, among others. So non-executive directors should have high ethical standards and should be able to act with integrity. They are expected to be able to support the executive team and monitor its conduct appropriately. Also, when it comes to demonstrating willingness to listen, to question, to debate, to challenge, they must not be found wanting. So board structure, executive and non-executive directors are two types of board of directors. Can you identify the remaining or different types of board of directors? I want you to go through your notes and go through your cortex to identify different types of directors. Board structure and corporate governance. Board structure is very important when it comes to adding value to a corporation. Structuring a board is focused on ensuring that the board has an effective composition, size, and commitment to adequately discharge responsibilities and duties. It deals with the balance of power. Board structure has to focus on performance. Board structure has to focus on independence. It is a foundation for an effective board, and it focuses on the background interest, positions of its members, among others. So structure the board to add value. It's a principle that seeks to ensure the board has an effective composition, size, and commitment to adequately discharge its responsibilities and duties with chairperson, independent director, CEOs, with their responsibilities separated. So the structure of the board is specifically to add value to that corporate business. So by implication, Every organization that does not add value, every structure that does not add value to an organization has defeated its purpose. Now, when it comes to board size, board structure, we can view board structure from the perspective of the size. And it is important that the board is a size and is composed of individuals that have the skill and that are there in the best interest of the company. And the size of the board should be limited so as to encourage efficient decision making. Board composition. Board composition should be focused on competencies, not popularity. It should also be focused on skills and expertise of individuals who are capable of running the board, of managing the organization, or of managing, of participating in the organization, contributing to the success of the organization. It is also important to consider experienced individuals when there is consideration for board composition. So all of these and many more must be considered in the structuring of the board. So I want you to try as much as possible, focus on more of your note, read your core text and your note, read your PowerPoint. This will help you to augment the knowledge that is needed.